A horrendous season for Kentucky in 2024. How about 2025? Is it going to be much better? Well, the bad news is the schedule is going to be very similar, and it was a brutal schedule in 2024. So let's give you a very early projected record for Kentucky here in this video. But first, we'll look at that 2025 schedule. Here is Kentucky's schedule in 2025. And again, it's very similar to the schedule in 2024. You just flip the home and away games in the SEC. They don't have a tough non-conference schedule, but they do play Toledo. So Toledo could be a tricky game. And then, of course, they play Louisville. They play them every year. So it's not, it's not a cakewalk non-conference schedule by any means. Louisville could be a top 25 team for sure. Again, outside of Louisville, they don't really challenge themselves. They never really do. But, I mean, I don't know if they should when you play, a good quality rivalry game like they do, just like with, we see Florida, they play Florida State, but they still go out and schedule other games. But, again, some teams do that, some teams do not. We look at who they play at home and who they play on the road. At home this year in the SEC, it's going to be Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. On the road, it'll be South Carolina, Georgia, Auburn, and Vanderbilt. So, again, this flips from last year, and they, once again, will have a very difficult schedule in 2025. So they'll start with Toledo on August 30th. That'll be the opener. And like I said, this is not a guaranteed win. Toledo is a very solid team out of the MAC. I want to say they beat Mississippi State last year. Maybe that was somebody else, but they've done it before. So Toledo will be a tough matchup there, I think, to open up the season. Then they get Ole Miss September 6th. Remember they upset Ole Miss last year. What a crazy year for Kentucky. They upset Ole Miss. They were very close to beating Georgia, and then they just fell apart. So I don't know what they're going to be this year, but that'll be a tough one there to open up SEC play. Eastern Michigan on September 13th. Then they go to their first bye week on September 20th. And their bye weeks are at very strange times. Both are very early in the year. In fact, after their second bye week, they're going to play 7 straight games. So that is a very, very strange place to put the bye weeks. You got back-to-back road games in between the bye weeks. South Carolina and Georgia, September 27th and October 4th. Very tough games there on the road, back-to-back. So this is a Kentucky team that could be looking at, a 2-3 start, maybe even a 1-4 start if they fall to Toledo. If they can knock off Ole Miss, then maybe you can get off to a 3-2 start, a 4-1 start even. So really, by that second bye week, we're going to know a lot about Kentucky, and we're going to know if they are going to be at the bottom of the SEC again, or if maybe they're going to be, back to their old ways. So after that second bye week, they'll play Texas at home on October 18th, and then they play Tennessee at home October 25th. So back-to-back home games there, but against very tough teams. Then they've got to go on the road to play Auburn on November 1st. Obviously, tough place to play. Auburn beat them last year. You've got Florida next on November 8th. That's a home game for Kentucky. But it's going to be tough. And then they do get a little bit of a breather. They get Tennessee Tech on November 15th. That's the good news. I'm just looking at this schedule. If I was Kentucky, I would have probably found a way to schedule, a Tennessee Tech type team after Eastern Michigan or after Georgia, and just get a bye week there late in the season. But they're going to have 7 straight games. Vanderbilt up next on November 22nd. That'll be on the road. And then Louisville on the road November 29th to close things out. Very, very tough schedule here for Kentucky in the SEC. You're playing a lot of the tougher teams. You're playing Texas, playing Georgia, playing Ole Miss, South Carolina. It's going to be a very difficult schedule. So how tough is this schedule compared to other teams in the SEC? Well, it's one of the toughest. You can see their SEC opponents last year were 38-26 in SEC play. That's a 59% winning percentage. That's the third toughest conference schedule in the SEC. So Kentucky definitely has a tough schedule again this year. And, it could very easily be another horrendous season for them if they get off to a slow start. Again, they're going to have to pull off some big wins, some big upsets if they're going to have a chance to get to a bowl game in 2025. Will Kentucky turn things around in 2025? We're going to get that early projected record here, but first let's look back at the last 4 years and our projections. So in 2021, they were projected to go 7-5. They went 9-3. In 2022, projected to go 8-4. They went 7-5. In 2023, projected to go 7-5. They did go 7-5, but then last year, way under the projection. Projected to go 7-5. They went 4-8. So a very disappointing year for them, obviously. Again, you look at 22 and 23, they were right there, pretty much where they were expected to be. Had a good year in 21 and a very disappointing year in 2024. So we'll see what it looks like. Again, normally the projection's around 7-5. I'll go ahead and tell you it is much, much lower this year. And our projections are all based off of our tier rankings. And so Kentucky is in tier 5. So they're in tier 5. That's the next to lowest tier just in terms of the SEC. Mississippi State is the only team that's in tier 6, the tier below Kentucky. So keep that in mind. But here's the schedule, and here is the scale that we use. So if Kentucky plays, let's say, a tier 6 team, let's say they played Mississippi State, that game would be in the purple. Unless it was a road game, then it would be a 50-50 game. And that's kind of the way this works. Not really going to have many games where they're big favorites. You start with Eastern Michigan and Tennessee Tech. Kentucky should be able to roll in these games. You know, I'd put Tennessee Tech closer to 100%. I'd put Eastern Michigan probably closer to 80%. But both games are in the green, so we can pretty much guarantee wins in those games. Toledo, though, could be a little bit tricky. We've got this one in the blue because this is a pretty good team out of the MAC. I don't think that's a guaranteed win by any means. You know, Kentucky should be, 10 to 14 point favorites in this game, but it's still a game that they could lose. You like their chances. They should win, but I wouldn't be shocked if there was an upset here in this game. So really only 3 games where Kentucky is a clear favorite. They're going to be an underdog really in every other game that they play, unless some of these teams turn out to just be a lot worse than we expect. So you've got 3 games here where we're giving them almost no chance. South Carolina, Georgia, and Texas all below 20%. South Carolina is a tier 2 team, plus that game is on the road. Georgia and Texas are tier 1 teams, so those are going to be in the red regardless. So, again, there's no human element here. There's no predictions. We don't do predictions until after spring. The human side of me says that South Carolina game should not be in the red. That's a game that has a chance to be pretty close. Probably should be in the orange or the yellow. But, again, it's all based off of our tier ranking system, and it just comes out the way it comes out. It's a formula. There is no prediction here. There is no, again, human element. It's just based off of numbers. So 3 games in the red, and then we've got several games here in the orange. So Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, and Louisville. All of these games are in the orange because these are teams that are a couple tiers ahead of Kentucky at least. Tennessee is a tier 2 team. Kentucky, again, a tier 5 team. It is at home, so that's why it's in the purple, in the orange instead of the red. Same thing with Florida. Auburn and Louisville are tier 3 teams, but those games are on the road, which means those will be very difficult. And again, with our formula, that's how it comes out. Those 4 games in the orange. So now Vanderbilt is actually 1 tier above Kentucky. And so this game right here is in the yellow. And, again, me personally, I'd probably say that's more of a 50-50 game. But just based off of our tier rankings, based off of where these teams finished last season, that is why that game is in the yellow. Which means, if you look at this schedule, again, Kentucky probably going to be underdogs in 9 out of their 12 games. I think Vanderbilt's the only game that might flip around if Vandy turns out to be a bit of a disappointment. Maybe Florida falls apart. That game's at home. Maybe they're favored in that game, but probably not. I think this is probably accurate. I think they will be underdogs in 9 games, which means if they don't win any of those games, they'll go 3-9. Now, that's not the projection, because the projection does say they'll have a chance to maybe pull off a win in one of those games. The projection also says they might lose to Toledo. So how does it come out? If you average it all out, it's actually 4-8. So the same record as last year for Kentucky. Their tier did not change. We didn't really see anything that made us think that, this is a team that's definitely going to be better or definitely going to be worse. They figure to be a similar team. So it does make sense with a similar team and a similar schedule that projection would be 4-8. Same schedule or same record as last year. So a 4-8 projection for Kentucky in 2025. And if that's the case, you have to start wondering, is Mark Stoops? What do you guys think about Kentucky? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think it's going to be another disappointing season, or do you think they bounce back? Again, give me your projection down in the comments. Just a quick reminder, memberships are now available. You can find out more info. There's a link down in the description below. You can get early access to videos like this and much more. Check it out. Help support the channel. Become a member today.